Hi folks, this is Meredith from the Papery Craftery, and today we are switching it up a little bit. We're taking a break from all the flowers we've been doing lately, doing something a little bit more silly. We're going to be making quilling paper balloon dogs. So my main color of my balloon dog today is going to be red, but I have 3 different shades going from lighter to darker, and I'll explain why we need all that when it comes to that point. We are also going to need a little bit of white. So you can use whatever colors you want for your balloons, but you're going to need 3 shades of that color. I'm going to be using a needle tool today. I'm going to be using my tweezers, some scissors, and I'm going with my Elmer's glue all in my needle nose container. I don't need anything stronger today. I do have a work surface with parchment paper, and then we're going to be doing a bit of measuring. So I have my ruler. And just in case you're not sure what at all I'm talking about, this is an example of a balloon dog, or you've seen other animals maybe. So just a long balloon, twisted and turned, usually by like a clown or something like a party. And this one is in the shape of a dog. And the shape itself has gotten kind of trendy. There's even a very famous artist named Jeff Koons who makes these massive, massive sculptures of balloon dogs. But it was really inspired by the little drawing that my daughter made a number of years ago of a balloon dog. So that's been kind of my inspiration for making this piece. So we're going to use our quilling paper to recreate the legs, the body, the tail, neck, ears, and head of this dog and put it all together in a way so that it resembles a balloon dog that you would get at like a party or what have you. So to start with, we are going to take our main color, which is today just a red quilling paper from Quilt Creations, and I'm going to tear off 12 inches of that paper. And all I'm going to be doing is pretty much just making an oval shape, but the way that I'm going to let it open up on my tool is a little different than normal because I want this quilling paper shape in the coil to have a lot of kind of visual weight to it. I don't want it to open up very much, but I don't want it to also be super solid like a tight coil. So what I'm doing is rolling it all up from end to end of my tool, and then I'm just kind of gonna pulse my fingers open and close just a little bit. That's about it. Notice it has a lot of paper on the outside and just a little bit of sections opened up in the middle. Then I give it a small pinch down the middle, right in the center, add a little bit of glue, and then seal that to shut. And then you're going to be able to see here in a second, a little bit better, there you go, how much layers of paper are still on the outside area. That outside ring is nice and thick, and that's going to aid in this looking like that actual tubular balloon that makes the dog. If your sides are a little too pointy, just give them a little rub with your tool. That'll smooth out those points. And that is the shape we're going to make over and over again for all those sections of our dog. So here's a whole bunch together. I made this little graphic so you can pause if you need the measurements. I have 3 that are 12-inch strips, 1, 2, 3 that are made from 10-inch strips, and then 1, this neck here, that is only 8 inches. But I made them all the same way. I just didn't think you needed to sit through me doing this over and over again. And you can see there, even already, that's going to be the shape of our dog. One thing that's going to really drive home the balloon aspect of this dog is 2 things. The little knot where its nose is, and then the little bit on the end of the tail that sort of sticks up. If you go back to the reference photos, you'll see that. So this is a 2-inch strip of the same color red paper. I rolled it up on my tool, took it off, and where the end is, I'm going to give it a big deep pinch on one side, and then just glue that down to set it. So this is just a very small little teardrop. And then I'm going to, on the other side of the teardrop, either use my fingernail just to push that in like that, or you can use your needle tool or something else that's small to push in the end there. That is very, very tiny. It's kind of like a heart shape. That's what's going to act as the knot on our balloon dog, which is going to be where the nose is. We'll put it together and you'll understand that more in a second. So that strip was 2 inches. And I dropped it here. Let me get it back on camera. This is just a 1-inch strip of the same red paper. And just rolling that all the way to the end. And squish. That is going to be the little bit on the tail. If you ever seen one of these balloons made in person, it again is just one long skinny balloon. Like I said, it's twisted and turned and knotted up, but there's always a little bit on the end making the tail look a little bit longer. So that's what this piece is going to be. So it's just a roll that's just smushed. Now, the last part that's going to make this really read balloon when we're done is the highlight of our balloon. So whatever light source is around your balloon is going to shine on it, and each section that we make is going to have a little bit of a highlight. That's what this strip is going to be used for. It's going to really aid in your balloon dog looking very three-dimensional. So I'm just making my usual double thick strip here, which is just one long piece of quilling paper folded down the center, and then a steady line of glue from that center point to the end, and then smushing it through my fingers in a bunch of different directions just to get all the air bubbles out. And we want it to be a little bit thicker because it'll really, one, be easier to incorporate into our coils when we get there, and also it'll just pop a little bit more. So we have all of our coils made into our oval shapes. I showed all the dimensions for those strips, the lengths that we're going to need. Now what we're going to do is we're going to wrap each piece with our medium red color. This one, it's not showing up as different on camera for some reason, but in person it is quite darker. This is a color called Crimson from Quill Creations. This is one of my favorite reds to use. It's just nice and deep without being too dark. And all I'm doing is wrapping it around my ovals twice. So one wrap and then another one. And then get that to set there. We're going to do this same process to every piece of our dog. One thing to note here, we're going to be adding a lot of little strips and they might get a little gluey. If you find little glue pieces ever on your quilling, try just wiping it with a damp paper towel. Usually those little glue bits will wipe right off and you won't be kind of picking at them and scratching them and, you know, not messing up your shapes. So that's something I do quite often, especially when I have tiny, tiny pieces. I tend to transfer a lot of glue from my fingers. Another thing I just wanted to show here is when you're wrapping your little balloon knot for the nose, you want to make sure that you push the color you're wrapping into that little indent that you make. If you don't, kind of hold it in there and make sure that's glued in that spot, you'll lose the shape. It just won't read exactly the same. Mine's already popping out there a little bit. I didn't hold it long enough. Here we go. So yeah, even these little pieces you're going to want to wrap twice with that medium color. And we're doing the wrapping because, again, that's going to be another thing that's going to help this look more three-dimensional. So not only are we going to add a highlight, but we're making each individual piece itself look three-dimensional by having a lighter color in the center and then getting darker to the outside. Here we go. And now every piece we have now is wrapped twice. So now comes the, I don't want to say hard part, it just takes a little mental gymnastics for a second, because again, we have our highlight there, we have our white strip we're going to be using, and then we have our darkest color, in this case red, our darkest red. That's going to be the shadow, if you will. So we're thinking whatever direction our light comes in, the opposite side of each piece, what I'm showing here, is going to have the shadow. So my light is coming from this direction. My shadow is going to be on the opposite. So behind and to the right is where my shadow is going to be on each piece. You can do the opposite. You can have your light coming in from the right side, so then your shadow would be on the left side. Totally up to you. And all I'm going to do to make the idea of the shadow is just cover the side that I decide has the shadow with 2 strips of our darkest color. So in this case, that's going to be a color called deep red, and that is from Craft Harbor. So all I do to that is just kind of measure it up and then tear 2 pieces. Doesn't have to be exact, it can be approximate. Don't make yourself crazy by worrying if this is covering the entire half. Then we're just going to kind of lay it on there and then do the same thing to the second piece. And this is subtle, you guys. This isn't like a really drastic color change. It might look like it when they're individual pieces, but when you put it all together, it's again just the idea of making this look as true to form as we can. So that's why we made the coils not open up so much. That's why we wrapped it with the first color. That's why we're adding the shadow and the highlights, just to make it look as real as possible. That's the kind of quilling I like to do. You don't have to go this far if you don't want to. You can just make the first shapes, just those ovals and the nose and the tail. Fast forward until we start putting it all together and calling it a day. Totally up to you. So there's my second piece. Get that to lay down as much as I can. And now I have wrapped every single piece. There's my ear. That's our last one. So not only did I wrap all the big ones, but I also included a little bit of a shadow to the nose piece and to that little tail bit that you can see coming off the top right there. At this point, you can see it's really starting to come together. All the pieces are done. We're going to, before we add the highlight, put our dog completely together. I'm just using Elmer's glue for this still. If you want to, you can use a tiny bit of tacky glue. You only need a very small amount of glue here because these pieces are all going to kind of fit together like a puzzle. So you really don't need a lot of glue. I didn't even use any pins. I'm just using my surface here in case anything decides to stick. And I found it easiest to start with the body and the legs. So there's those 3 pieces. Those are my 3 12-inch pieces. And then I'm going to add my tail here, which is in 2 parts. There's the first part. That's a 10-inch piece. And then here's my tiny little 1-inch piece that I was talking about earlier. That's the end of the tail. Really, really small. And like I said, even that part has one of those darker shadows on it. So I'm going to put that there. And then you can let that dry for a bit if you'd like, or you can just start putting the rest together. This is my smallest of my ovals. That's the one that was 8 inches. So there. And we have an ear, and then we have the 2 pieces of the nose. Another thing to mention, in my daughter's drawing and in our reference photo, the dog was standing more to the side, so you can see all 4 legs. For ease of use, my dogs are straight on from the side. They're not at an angle. So that's why we're only doing just the 2 legs, just to really make this a little bit easier. There is our little knot for our little nose. And you can see it's really starting to come together, but it's going to read a lot more balloon when we add the highlight. We're going to let this dry for a little bit and set before we add that part. So this is a few minutes later here. I have my double thick strip is totally dry. I have some tweezers and I have my a little bit of scissors. So remember, our shadow is on the back to the right side of everything. We're going to add our highlights coming in from that other side. I've already decided all that. Everything's already set. So I snip a tiny little piece of our white, and then I soften it up by running it with my needle tool a little bit. Then I'm just going to slide it in between the few open layers of each shape. Sometimes it'll slide right in, sometimes it won't. So this first one here decided not to slide right in. By the way, if you want to at this point pin your dog down, you can. That'll keep it from sliding around on you. If you can't get your little bit slid in easily, you can very carefully use your needle tool just to start separating your pieces and then kind of going in at an angle. Just push it in. The thickness that we made, the white strip, is going to make it added in a little bit easier. And like I said, it makes it pop a little bit more. So there's our first one. Here's another one. Soften it up with the side of my needle tool a little bit just to give it a slight curve. And then I'm just going to slide it in at an angle into my ear. See if this one wants to go easily. A little bit easier. And get that in. There we go. That one's maybe a little bit long, but that's okay. If you feel like it's a little bit too straight or it's not at the right spot, you can usually move it around a little bit with your needle tool. It's not messing up my coils at all. It's just sliding right in there. So don't be afraid that you're going to ruin your dog. It just kind of just eases in between a couple of the layers. I'm not adding it to the edge where it's really thick and dense with those layers that didn't open. This is just when it starts kind of having some space between the layers, just sliding it in. Some of your pieces of your dog are going to need a smaller highlight and some are going to need a little bit of a bigger one. So bear that in mind. That piece where our neck was, that's going to need just a tiny little highlight. But we're going to add it to every piece except for the nose and except for the tail. See how also mine are not falling out? I did not add any glue to add this highlight. I'm just sliding it in between the paper and it is staying in there. So after we get a few done, you can see it's starting to look a little bit like a balloon dog. That highlight, I think, really makes the dog. It really makes it look like it's a balloon at this point. We're just going to finish our last couple there. That one I needed to use my needle tool again to make it have a little bit more space. That is okay. We're going to keep snipping until we get to the end and we'll see our finished dog. And here we go. That is our final dog. You can do different colors. You can have them facing the opposite direction if you want to. I would bear in mind, sometimes the colors do make a difference and can change the way that the highlight looks. Like this orange one here, you can't see the highlight as well. But in this bright pink one, you can. So just bear in mind, you're going to need to choose something that has a little bit of a contrast with the white. But you can have a lot of fun with these. They're about a little bit over an inch wide. They're not tiny. You can definitely change the dimensions if you want to make them a little bit bigger. And then you can put a bunch together to make a card, or you can make little gift tags out of these. It'd be really cute for like a kid's birthday party on their little gift or something like that. I don't know, you guys tell me. But they were really just very fun to do. Switch it up a little bit, do something silly, get away from the usual quilling projects that I've been doing lately. And if you do like this project and you want to make more quilling balloon type things, I do have an old video I'll share in the description box along with all of my tools and supplies about a heart balloon, kind of a bouquet that I shared a number of years ago. Also in the description box, you'll find a link to this here page, my Buy Me a Coffee page, where you can find a bunch of quilling extras and worksheets and different things. It's an easy way to help support my business and this channel and allows me to be able to keep making these videos. So it's always greatly appreciated. Thank you to those who have already partaken. It's really, really helpful. In the meantime, please leave any questions you have in the comment section and I'll answer those as soon as I can. Be kind to yourself. Look out for your neighbors. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can be around for my next video, and I'll see you then. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.